32 people waiting.
Okay, let me have two second version of mine.
Maybe we should start. Hello, everyone who is watching us right now. We are very, very excited to have you, all of you right now in this channel and watching us. I'm actually very excited because of two main reasons. So the first reason is that this meetup is the first online collaboration meetup between different GDGs and meetup groups in Norway. The whole country. It's very exciting, and thanks to online opportunity. And the second reason is that we're gonna have two awesome speakers. Maxim Salnikov from Microsoft, who is talking about the offline capability of the Progressive Web app, and Laura Morinigo from Samsung Internet, who is talking about the installing capability of the Progressive Web app. So two awesome sessions. So we're gonna go through the first talk first, and then we're gonna have 5-minute short break afterwards. And then the second talk will start immediately after 5 minutes. And then after both talks, we're gonna have our Q&A session. So if you have any question, if you have anything that you wanna ask from our speakers, please feel free to send it to our chat. I will grab them and then post it to our speakers so they can answer your question. Thanks again for watching us, and please welcome Maxim Salnikov.
Hello, hello, folks. So great to virtually see you. You see, I miss my public speaking so much. I even built a mini stage here at home. So I will try to mimic the normal speaker behavior. So I have a clicker. I have everything. Let's start. And I'm super excited to present about things I love very much all around progressive web apps. And in this particular session, we'll speak about offline capabilities. Okay, let's do it. First, we'll decide what is offline ready web application at all. And my plan is to give you tools to start building this right tonight, right today. Shortly about me, I'm a big fan of progressive web apps, so I call myself advocate of PWA advocate, and I run lots of activities around PWAs. Together with Majid, we run Progressive Apps Oslo meetup and its London chapter, and I run 2 conferences about web and mobile development. And I'm GDE, Google Dev Expert, so I'm super happy to present exactly for this group, which is Google Developer Group. My Twitter handle is webmaxru. Right after the session, I will post link to this slide deck, which I stream straight from online. So let's hope that internet is fine today. First, I want to start with these 3 sentences I found while I preparing the session. And that's interesting because I was searching on the web something for like web as platform, web as application platform or operating system, and found this white paper from folks who also explored opportunities of having web as a medium to run, to deploy, to distribute the applications. And I was super surprised by the date of this article, year in particular, and it's like more than 12 years ago. Just imagine, these ideas of web as a platform are not new at all, are not something that came up recently. But what do I mean exactly by web as platform? What it makes web such an amazing place? Let me give some points for you. First, browsers, right? We cannot even reason about web without mentioning browsers. What's good here? We have them everywhere, right? They are always fresh. And thanks to browser APIs, we have access to majority of great features we have on our devices. And in this regards, I mainly speak about mobile devices, right? But not limited to. JavaScript. You can love JavaScript, you can hate JavaScript, but it's definitely a versatile language. You can use different approaches, paradigms to write code in this. Thanks to really great tooling, we can actually use other languages to write something for the web, right? And thanks to these transpilers, compilers, this code will be converted to something that browsers understand. And of course, it's JavaScript, literally on the fly, right? So if you don't like JavaScript, there are at least 17 languages you can use to compile to JavaScript. This is from Wikipedia article I checked recently. And it's evolving in very conservative way. And for this case, I call this smart way because it makes sure that we will not break the web by a newer language version of this language, right? Engines, place where we run our JavaScript. Well, we as web developers do not develop JS engines themselves, right? By the way, if you are a developer of one of these engines, great job, folks. Kudos. For example, if you work on V8 or some other engines, but we rely on what their developers bring to us, right? And luckily, they all focus on the performance. And maybe our code is not optimal, right? Of course, let's try to write efficient code. Anyway, engines will do their best to optimize. And again, thanks to the fact that the browsers are pretty much everywhere, JavaScript also has great embedding possibilities to quite constrained devices. Talking about UI, well, we don't have any excuses anymore. Say something like, okay, I write the code, I don't care about layout because it's too complex. It's not simple still, right? But we have all the tooling now to create great responsive, adaptive, accessible interfaces. And thanks to open source Motion, we have lots of high quality libraries of components and foundations of this component for us to build our own libraries. And by the way, I believe it was one of my recent tweets, or maybe the latest one. Please check article from yesterday from Chromium team about restyling of native look of browser consoles. So all these buttons, checkboxes, and especially newer one like progress meter, they will have way more consistent look across platforms, across browsers, which is really great news. But it might be breaking change for some projects. So keep an eye on this. And last but not least, great community of developers. So according last year's survey from Stack Overflow, we are majority of developers ever. So we see JavaScript, HTML, CSS, like 3 building blocks of web platform, are on first and second place with quite a good margin, and almost 70 people, not 70, yes, 70% of the people, they say that they know these technologies, right? JavaScript in particular. Okay, that's great. Too shiny picture, right? So what could be wrong? We have some historical issues. Web was not invented as an application platform. It was invented like a place to share documents and link these documents using hyperlinks, right? This is why historically he really depends on being online. And on this picture, I show my big friend offline Dino, which we see quite often. And I don't know, for me, it's normal situation when I try to, for example, preload some applications in tabs of my browser on mobile device. Then I jump into the plane when it will be available again. I can't wait, and open these tabs. And for some reason, document disappeared because I don't know, because of memory pressure, they were unloaded. I know that they are somewhere on the mobile device, maybe in form of HTTP cache somewhere, but I see offline Dino, and that's not good. And by the way, JavaScript was also not invented like a language for this full-scale complex applications. I have this animated picture just to remind you that in many cases JavaScript usage in, let's say, late 90s was dedicated to something like this, just to show some cool stuff, so some cool dynamic stuff. Of course, not only snowflakes, but to make some forms more dynamic. But again, it was nothing about full-scale applications. Okay. So web is more than 30 years old now. Just hard to believe. And were there some tries to fix this historical issue of the web? Yes, of course. And how to make proper offline web application? We can split the approach into two big groups. Everything about caching and everything about installability. Okay, what was about the caching? HTTP cache, old gold one, still valid, still working very good and solving challenges, but it's not our challenge. It's let's say for underlying networking issues, so it's to optimize it on that very lower level. And we as front-end developers have really almost nothing to control this, to reuse this in some explicit way. So of course it's more just for a joke here in our session. Upcache was approach to standardize offline pre-caching and caching of the application. Completely failed because of purely designed APIs, because of awful developer experience and not that useful user experience. Installation, and by the way, our next session is about this, so I will just say a couple of words here without too much details. So Laura will take care of this part of PWA story. Again, just as a joke, we still can save page as complete mode. It's well hidden now in browser menus, and good luck if you try to save some single page application. Yes, it might work for hello world page with one picture, but not more actually. Chrome applications, nice approach, deprecated now, and even from the name you see that it's too binded to one particular browser vendor, so not our option. And these different frameworks, libraries, tools to create some native experience based on our web application. They are fine, they work good, but still it feels like some workaround, right? So web has to have possibilities to work offline without need to be wrapped into some native code. So what if we take best from the best of these two worlds, caching, installation, plus we add the quite strict requirement that it has to be based on web standards. It should not be related to one particular browser or like one platform. How do we call this? Without any waiting, I can say that, of course, we are talking about progressive web apps, right? This is not getting started with PWA session. This is why I'll be very short in my understanding of what is this. So this is the way we architect and build applications these days. If we want to use modern web APIs exposed by correspondingly modern web browsers, why? To delight our users, our customers, by the great features which were never available on web before, which were available only in native world of native applications. And good for us, progressive apps work everywhere. Maybe not everything, but we know how to deal with this. We know that progressive enhancement strategy, something we in front-end development work with for years. So yeah, why not to continue the same approach to build our PWAs? And just to set the stage, offline readiness is not like equal to PWA. It's not less, not more. Let's say to some extent it's even orthogonal, but it's definitely a valuable part of PWA story. But again, you can create PWA which is awfully offline non-ready, and you can create great offline ready app which is formally, for some criteria, you cannot call PWA. This is just for you to understand. So what builds great PWA? Some points I gathered for you. First, and actually, yes, here nothing to invent, I'm sorry. We can grab our mobile device, open any application and check what's going on there, the native application. I mean, of course, after we installed app from Google Play or Apple App Store, this will be available, obviously, right? We downloaded this. So why not to have the same for the web? If we use some data while we run this application, which I believe 99% of the cases, right? So we start application to consume data, to send data back. Why not to smartly cache this for future usage, to save traffic, to make it as fast as possible? Of course, why not to have the same for the web? What we do, what our customers do while they are offline. So this is pretty common scenario for mobile apps when we use them offline. For example, I don't know, we could start creating our beautiful picture on Instagram while we are disconnected from internet, and then save this and we can post it later, or it can be posted automatically even without our intervention. It's possible now for the web. And the next point is about this flow, which is which might be affected by, for example, network going up and down, connections, disconnections. Of course, they should not break our flow. So we have to be prepared for this. We might need to have our application updated itself, and the data of this, even while they are not run in foreground. And again, it's quite popular approach for mobile native apps. So if I understand correctly, it's turned on by default. And of course, taking into account all these points, we still want to have all the features of platform, of a particular operating system, particular device. And at the same time, we want to keep the soul, the nature of web, which is discoverability, linkability, openness. And yes, web is everywhere, and the barrier is very low to start working with web. So you don't need any store, any account. You just open browser and start working immediately. We want to have everything. Okay, let's walk through some of these points. And let's start with application itself, UI. What do we need to care about when we are trying to have offline ready version of our application? Well, no magic at all. First, we have to understand what builds our application. In case of web story, well, this is pretty obvious. Index.html, maybe some extra pages, main JavaScript bundle, main CSS bundle, maybe some pictures, maybe some icons. Just what builds this frame, which I have as an illustration to this slide. Well, on the first start, we put it somewhere into the cache, right? And when we are offline, we solve this from cache. No magic at all. And of course, we don't want to always stick to very first version of the application, so we have to find a way to manage this version somehow. No secret at all. These features driven by API called Service Worker, which is well, quite extensive API with lots of sub modules, sub APIs, and friendly APIs, independent APIs. What is Service Worker? Again, this is not introsession to PWA. This is why it's just a refresher. I hope having Service Worker with us for so many years, you know the basics. So it's JavaScript code, no magic, no secret, and it works like a gateway, so between our application and the whole external world. And by saying external world, I not only mean internet, right? So it also could be environment where the application runs, for example, the local one, the browser, the platform. So it intercepts requests and gives their own responses. I mean, responses we create and we have full control. So in the simplest case, we just pass fetch request as is to the network and pass responses as is. Maybe not that smart way to use Power Service Worker, right? If we involve cache into this loop, wow, it adds way more interesting opportunities for us. And this is how actually we build this offline magic. And of course, platform operating system can also send some signals to Service Worker, and we can react on them. And we can receive direct signals from the web. How do we write our own Service Worker? Just to super briefly give you again maybe a refresher reminder how that works. So it's event-driven worker, right? So on installation, on event called install, we put our stuff to the cache. By our stuff, I mean resources that build our application shell. On activate, it's a good point to start managing versions. And on fetch, as I mentioned on the previous slide, we check, okay, if this request for logo PNG, what to do with this? Ask cache or go straight to the network. It's our responsibility to write this code. Nice. Maybe not always nice. And I really love this tweet. It's from last summer, and it's actually only partially a joke, right? Because you easily can create Service Worker, which is hard to kick out from the deployment. And of course there are some tools to do this, right? And kill switch is one of them. But still, I've seen lots of stories, heard lots of stories about folks who deployed something and invited their millions of customers there, and then really were very, very sad by getting bad feedback, let's say like this. Let's be polite, from folks who visited the website and expected something else. What could go wrong? What could go wrong in case of you writing your own Service Worker? Quite a few things. Let me just list something. I want to list some things you have to care about, even for the simplest scenario of if you create production-ready service worker and deploy this. You want more? Please. Maybe something more. Maybe something more. Maybe this one. Maybe this one. I think I forgot a couple of things. Even in this case, you still can do something wrong. And please understand me correctly. I don't want to stop you from writing your own service worker. I just want to emphasize the need to do lots of things quite good. Good enough is not an option either for service worker because again, think about all the scenarios, not about only the happy one, and many things can go wrong. But I promised you to give you some guidance for you to start building your PWA, your offline ready web application, right after my session, right? Right after our meetup. Yes. So is there a helper? Of course, great library called Workbox. And I will give you super short intro how to just start with this. And maybe you can follow my steps and create at least proof of concept, at least prototype of your offline ready application, of offline ready front-end web application. How to use power of Workbox while still managing your own service worker. So first, Workbox is a great library which includes lots of features straight out of the box. This is just a subset of what it gives us. And without any further waiting, let's start straight away. So let's install this Workbox build. For now, for the simplest use case, of course, we are limited in time, right? So this will be a super simple scenario, how to start with Workbox. For this, we only need one module. So it's modularized library, and we need only one of them called build, and we can safely put it into developer dependencies because we will not use it on runtime. It's only for build step. Since this is Node module, we have to create quite a short Node.js script to help us. Actually, this will be our glue between application and Workbox. And let's call this Workbox build.js because this will actually build service worker for us. And let's start from the configuration. First, you remember that we have to define what builds our application shell. And it's quite convenient syntax and way to do this using globs. Maybe even default option will work for many of projects, but be very, very careful. Don't put, let's say, non-critical resources to this application shell. The smaller application shell, the better, because we still have this first load speed challenge, right? When we literally count every millisecond. So be very, very careful with this. What else? We provide source service worker. That means that we'll have some file which is not that ready to go for production yet. This is why it's called source. And of course, using swdest, we actually produce this real service worker. Back to the source one. In the simplest scenario, it might look like literally two-liner. And again, for the case of simplicity, I import scripts from CDN, from Google's CDN, where you can find Workbox. Of course, you can easily host everything online, on your machine on-prem, and then deploy it. So you will have fully packaged application. And this is really a magical method called precache and route. And by the way, I think I forgot to update this slide. In Workbox 5, which is latest stable version, instead of this empty array, you have to provide the name of a variable. I will write it as a comment to this slide, or will update the slide on the fly. So actually, this magic method, it does all the dirty job for us. It's precaching, it serves assets, resources when we need, and it manages versions. But back to this empty array, of course, we have to provide some information here, right? Here we have to explain to Workbox what to pre-cache explicitly. And no magic, we go back to our Workbox build.js. So you remember that here we have our configuration from previous slide. We have, again, one simple method called inject manifest, which does this text editing operation for us. So literally what it does, it just iterates through our source folder of our application according to the templates we provided in the configuration, builds exact list of resources like index.html, main CSS, main.js, whatever, calculates hash sums for managing versions, and just opens this source service worker, injects this into the array, and copy file to destination. Literally regular file operations, which helps us a lot. And then we only have to integrate this step to our overall build. So let's say if we use this way to build the application, we just put this run of Workbox build script as a last step. Of course, it should be the last one, because before running this, we have to have ready to go application in the corresponding folder. And that's it. By implementing this, maybe this will take let's say fewer time for you to implement this compared to my time on this virtual stage. Just try. You have application shell ready to go with fully managed versions, so you don't have to care literally about anything. So it's completely production ready. The Workbox is quite mature library. What about runtime? Of course, 99%, if not more, of web applications, then they consume some data during runtime. APIs, CDNs, whatever. We open some URL and we always interact with some APIs. Is there a way to automate this using Workbox also? Of course. But first, let's have a look how can we achieve this using our handmade service worker. By the way, let me remove this cursor from the stage. Yep. Going back to our favorite fetch event, which we can listen to and process in our handmade service worker, and then the sky is the limit. Actually, we check, for example, URL of this request, and we can implement different strategies for different pieces of the application. Of course, the strategy but should be completely different for our application shell compared to APIs, and even for different pieces of API, like I listed on this simple scenario, we can have completely different strategies. And by strategy, I mean this. I call this ping pong, because this is literally like going back and forth. Do we have network available? Then try to fetch resource from there, at the same time put it into the cache for the later usage, or vice versa. If a resource in the cache, let's try to extract it from there. For example, if we are talking for some archive information and we do not update it that often, then we can rely on cache first strategy. If it's not in the cache, let's check the network. If it's in the network, let's fetch it from network, put it in the cache for later usage. So it's logic algorithms. Not something super complex, but lots of things to care about. Again, if we go back to the slides with lots of things, yeah, you will experience this right after you try to create something completely by hands. How do we use Workbox here? In some form, we return declarative approach. So back to the story about app cache, this deprecated API we had before, it was declarative. So we let's say, described behavior of this or that resource regarding caching. It was not enough. So it's not flexible enough. It's not powerful enough, and it doesn't cover many cases, or let's say all cases of caching strategies. But Workbox, it combines best of these two approaches. First, we can be very declarative, like in this piece of code. It's as simple as possible, right? We define pattern of the URL and we say how to behave. Network first strategy. That's it. But still, if we need, we can use our custom code and we can use plugins if you really need to implement something that not implemented yet in Workbox, not implemented this yet in this or that strategy. So we have full flexibility when needed. When we can use it as is, it literally takes 2 lines to provide proper runtime caching. Talking about strategies, we have 5 now, and I believe they cover majority of the cases, and some plugins to fine-tune the behaviors, and the great possibility to write our own one. And yeah, I encourage you to write your plugin and to share this with community. Folks from Workbox team, they are very open to your pull requests, to your bug reports, to everything. So Workbox is a classical open source product. What about actions our users do and data our users generate while they are offline? And I have this picture with treasure box, not by mistake or just because it's too beautiful. No, because these actions and this data, they are super valuable, and we don't want to miss any single byte of what our dear users generated to not make them sad after all. We have API called background sync, and let me remove this. Actually, it's very confusing name because only thing this API does, it's sending one event to service worker in one very particular case when we go from offline mode to online mode. How the browser checks if we were offline but now we're online? Let's outsource this to our browsers. We don't want to even know how that works. Let's say it works good for majority of the cases, maybe not for some complex Li-Fi scenarios, but anyway, it's not trivial thing, and it's good that browser and underlying platform decides that this is the moment. You can say, Maxim, we have a corresponding event in regular JavaScript, like online, offline. We can set listeners for this and catch these events. Yes, but this is the key difference. This event will come to your service worker even when the application is. And of course, it adds lots of extra magic. Magic for web, but it's very normal behavior for native applications. So this is something we all used to. How to use this one? In handmade scenario, this will require some efforts for you. First, you register these events. For example, when you submit a form, so you have to say, okay, instead of posting the information straight to API, if we are offline, we want to register this. And then in your service worker, you actually intercept event called sync, and based on this tag you provided, because you might have different let's say behaviors for different pieces of your application, you actually catch this in your service worker, and you can do useful things. What do I exactly mean? In most of the cases, this will be just a retry of sending this data to some external API, to your API, and this will happen completely under the hood. So this will happen after user closed tab with your application, after user even closed the browser. But there is a trick, right? So all modern browsers, they try to reside in memory, and even if you click this button, close browser, it's not closing, right? So you have to, if you really wish to unload it from memory, you have to go a bit deeper in settings and menu items. So for majority of the people, like let's say for regular users, this means that this magic will happen even in the closed browser use case. Okay, workbox, can we be covered in this situation? Yes. Let's say with some limitation. If we can say that, yes, everything, all we need in this scenario is just to repeat failed request, we can use workbox again in very simple form. I'm saying about this as a limitation because actually we can write any code instead of trying to let's say repeat this failed request. We can show some message to the user. We can do whatever we want. But if we say that we just need to do this, we just need to make sure that our data propagated to server when possible, workbox covers us. In this code sample, I use different notation for showing how we set the pattern for the URL, just to showcase you different opportunities, but regexp rules here also. And it's question of applying plugin, right? Plugin called background sync. So no surprise in the name. Maybe one thing I want to emphasize is this post on the line number 6, because by default, workbox intercepts GET requests from our application, but in this case, I believe in majority of the cases we need post because we are saying about, for example, sending form data, and if you provide this HTTP method explicitly, yeah, this will just this will work. Good, and basically only parameter we have to pass is max time we want to try this this propagation to the server. Again, works like magic, no extra efforts required from your side compared to manual work when we would need to learn about IndexedDB, learn about how to properly organize queues, because it might be not single form submit, but multiple, etc., etc. Okay, let's go a bit beyond of what's in production in majority of browsers now. Let's uncover some upcoming APIs, or APIs which are in origin trial, or in beta version, or in canary version. I'm not saying about where all this available intentionally, because it might change while I speak, right? So you know that Chromium team and Edge team now, they are quite good in releasing these updates. So what if we want to periodically refresh data we have in our application? Just imagine, for example, if we create super simple Twitter client based on web technologies, and we want to create it in form of PWA, and we want to make sure that every time our dear users open our beautiful application, they see updated feed. Is that possible? Well, to some extent. First, let me bust some myths around this API. This is not a cron in the browser. It's not a scheduler. It requires connection. And in the big picture, we do not set the cadence. So we cannot explicitly say that ping this API every minute. No, it's not like this. Yeah, for all these stories, there are corresponding different APIs, or you can say, Maxim, is this API ever useful? Why do we need this with such strict limitations? And I can tell you, yes, it covers this use case when we need to refresh some data, or maybe even an application itself, while we are connected to the network. Because basically, what is the reason to ever try to refresh data when you are disconnected? No, it's not about this. So let's set the stage correctly. Workbox is not helper here, unfortunately, so there is no corresponding module yet, but I encourage you to have a look at this. Maybe I will inspire you to create the one and, of course, share with the community. How does it work? Well, first, by its nature, it's somehow close to regular background sync. So in some form, it might look very familiar for you after the previous slides, right? So we register this periodic sync, and we provide only minimal interval. Like, please do not trigger this URL like that often. What is the real cadence? A bit later about this. And in our service worker, we, in very similar way, like we work with sync event, catch this event. We check the tag because, again, multiple options are available. I mean, we could refresh different parts of our application differently. And maybe while we caught this event, we will do some job. Maybe. Why? So first, how to not abuse our dear users by consuming their network bandwidth, by consuming their processor time and memory, because basically we can write any code here, right, on these events. First, browser tries to be very protective to our users. I mean, this is why we cannot set this maximum interval. We only set minimal, and browser decides the final cadence when actually this event can come to our service worker, and it's based on many factors. I believe this is not part of specification. This is something that every browser vendor decides for themselves. What could be the proper cadence, and it depends. For example, in case of Chrome, depends on how often do you interact with this application. And second, we can be also very careful about our users. And before doing anything, even if we were super lucky, super happy to get this event in our service worker, we might need to check what kind of connection do we have now? Is this cellular or Wi-Fi? And if cellular, maybe we can postpone this refreshment, right? If we are in data saver mode, of course, it should be no go for us to go for this extra like background refreshes. And last but not least, we can check if we have enough space on this user's device. So let's be very careful with our customers. Let's not misuse this API, because so it might happen that, for example, this API will be, I don't know, more tightly secured and more explicit actions from our users will be needed to enable this. So it's something that literally under testing now. And for example, you maybe know the story with push API, which started like, okay, super accessible, just start sending to everyone immediately right after folks confirmed, and you can show this subscribe message confirmation immediately after you start the application. Then it became more complex for developers, even more complex. And who knows, will we have this push at all? Of course, yeah, maybe I'm too pessimistic here. But anyway, to sum up this slide, let's be very careful. How to debug all this stuff? You will need to enable this explicitly in the current version of Chromium, and for periodic background sync, you will need one extra action, one extra check mark to do this. So you can find it on these slides. More tools, yes, just 5 seconds per slide. Native file system API. Of course, this is very natural for offline ready web application to have full access to file system, of course, with all the possible restrictions. And kudos to designers of this API. It looks quite good. I think was a good balance was found between developer experience and user security in that sense. Badging, well, if you wish to delight or annoy your users by this small notifications about number of unread message or unread notifications or something else that requires engagement, you are good to go. I believe it's now in more or less experiment mode, but let's check this. It's maybe now it in beta. And contact speaker, if we have a list of contacts on our device, why not to have an access on our web? And this is just 3 of over 100 new APIs are coming as a part of Project Fugu. What I really love in this project is openness. So you click this link on the slide, and basically you open this spreadsheet I have a screenshot from. And developers are not big fans of saying about dates when something will be released, but it's not the case for Fugu. We have at least some assumptions. And yes, please feel free to check which APIs are available, and every API has a corresponding link to this discussion in form of Chrome bug. So please take active part in shaping how the web will look tonight or tomorrow or in 1 year. To sum up, yes, web platform, it's a full-scale platform to run, deploy, distribute our applications. And all the basics of offline readiness are in production. I'm not saying that all APIs I showcased today are like in production everywhere, like Mac OS, Windows, Android, iOS, but at least basics, at least something that you can use to create application shell and provide runtime caching is available literally everywhere on every evergreen browser. Great tools like Workbox are waiting for you. And please, let's make sure that we do not overuse, do not misuse these powerful APIs. Let's make sure that we care about user experience, user safety first. And my best sentence is, this is just the beginning of great PWA story. And yeah, we are very close to parity of what web can do and what mobile native code can do. Yeah, I always use mobile, but it's not applicable only to mobile. It's applicable to every native code, desktop code, mobile code, whatever, and what JavaScript can do, what browser APIs can do. To continue our discussion, please join PWA Slack. I organized a couple of years ago, now that the largest place on planet where folks discuss progressive web apps. And thank you very much. Thank you, dear organizers. It was great pleasure. Unfortunately, I don't see every one of you, but yes, let's stay connected.
Thank you very much, Maxim. It was great, insightful presentation. So I learned a lot again from you, and I think everyone learned same as me. So thank you, everyone. So we're gonna have 5-minute break. We will be back again with our second speaker, and I note your question already. So Maxim and Laura will answer your question after the second talk. So see you in 5 minutes.
Hey everyone! I think you can hear me, right? All good? So, yeah, I hope that you're fine in your house or everything like that. First of all, thanks Maxim for that great presentation. Today I'm gonna talk about how you can make your app installable. First of all, I'm Laura. I'm currently based in London. I'm part of the developer advocate team by Samsung Internet, and I'm also part of the Google family as a Google developer expert. Um, so yeah, let's start talking about PWAs and what's going on around these. I would like to share what is discoverability, and as developers, I think one of our goals is that users use our apps, right? So here it says the discoverability is the quality of being able to be discovered or found. And as a web developer, for me is all about this, right? The web is such a great place. As Maxim said before, with the web, we are able to reach out people from different parts of the world easily. We can share just a link with our content. We have so many contents around, right? But still, we have to be able to see different ways to reach out different users and see how we can actually interact and build a better user experience. Okay, so let's go back about progressive web apps. I think Maxime was talking about some pros about progressive web apps. I like to define progressive web apps, the best of both worlds, native and web platform, right? And besides these, we have the option to not only combine features, because at the end we're bringing a kind of native app-like experience into the web. But what does it mean? We are building everything in web development. We're still using JavaScript. We're still using HTML and web technologies to build our apps. And yes, you can see that probably we're in a really good time talking about PWAs that actually everybody's trying to see what's the difference between a native app. Should I build every web app that I do a PWA or not? And one of the reasons that progressive web apps are currently really popular is that before, browsers were not able to have these features, right? For example, geolocation, better local storage, or even other features. So today we're going to talk about one particular feature that is the icon feature, right? So progressive web apps are great because they're progressive, they're fast, they are able to have offline experiences, and also because one of the most kind of popular features is the icon. And this can be in particular um, something that we really have to take care about, because icons can be a great feature so people can access to our apps easily and things like that. But what, as developers, we have to keep in mind in order to not just develop a great icon, in order to develop a great product for our users. Alrighty, so the icon feature here is one of the things that developers think like, yeah, if I'm going to build a PWA, I actually should put an icon. And if somebody thinks about progressive web apps, probably you will think that the icon is one of the main features that you have to check. The good part of having an icon is that actually progressive web apps are kind of first citizens, and is almost not any difference between other native apps. As you can see here, if you are using your mobile phone or something like that, users can access quickly to your app, okay? So if you see as a user your app there, you don't even have to know what is a PWA or if it's a PWA or not, or is made in Android or iOS, okay? So the idea behind this is to provide a better access to your users. Anyway, there's something that we should keep in mind, because if we build an icon to access to our app and actually make the users install our app, it doesn't mean that the user is going back and is going to use our app over and over again. That is called user retention and engagement. There are other techniques that actually we can use to build better user retention and engagement, but building an icon, you are providing a better access to your app, but you have to think also about how you're going to build a better user experience. So actually your user can go back to your app and stay and use it often. So let's go back to the tech side, okay? I always try to translate some definitions that we've been working on before in what does it mean to build a PWA, okay? So first of all, you need to have HTTPS, all right? We need to build trusted websites for our users. And second, we have our manifest file. So the manifest file is something that we are gonna see today, because thanks to the manifest file, it's gonna make your app installable, right? And third, we need to have a service worker. Maxim was talking about how we can actually build offline experiences using a service worker that basically is a script that allows us to actually manage the different response and requests for our HTTPS. Okay, so let's go back to the manifest file and actually how you can make your app installable. A manifest file is just a JSON file. Okay, we're gonna have a JSON file with different attributes as JSON has, and then these attributes are going to be different features that actually are going to make your app look like a native app. For example, it can be what is the icon, the start URL, right? Some other different things related with format. Actually, we're going to have an example now. And thanks to these, you're going to make your app discoverable. So how does it look, a manifest file? As I said before, is a JSON file. And these attributes or properties in terms of a manifest file are called members, okay? So let's take a look around what do we have here. This is an example about one app that we actually built as a demo of a PWA. And here we have things like name, short name, description, and other things like display, the theme color, background color. At the end, we can have more than these different members or properties of our manifest file, but there are a few things that we have to keep in mind about how we can build our manifest file, okay? So we have our JSON, and let's see some of the properties that we have to keep in mind. The first one is name, right? Actually, we're gonna check how this kind of stuff can make an impact into your web app if you need to put it into the store or something like that. So basically, name is gonna be used in the different app stores or browsers during different prompts, okay? So later we have short name. Short name is used to display the name to the user within the icon. Basically, when the same example that I was showing you before, that our web app is in the home screen or is in our desktop, is the name that is going to show to the user between the icon. Okay. Third one, this one is not mandatory usually, but it provides a better context about the app. Currently, some vendors are checking if they are going to be able to use description in the different app stores. Okay, that's the case of Samsung Internet, for example. And this one is pretty important. When you do start URL, it is the one that actually is going to launch when the user opens your PWA, right? So it maybe is your home screen, and you just want to have a welcome page, or it can be the root page. So basically, is the start URL is the same one that you should put so that the user can open your app directly from the icon. Okay. Then this is the final property that we have to keep in mind. Again, we have more properties, but these ones are the ones that you should keep in mind to actually make a complete manifest file are icons, right? So with icons, we're going to have an array with the different types of icons that the browser can choose from. And we need to include size and type. Why? Because depending on which vendors we have, some vendors need a certain type of icon or a specific size. Okay, so these are properties that actually have their explanation. If you need to check more examples, I really suggest to check what's happening in W3C standards. Why? First of all, because the manifest file is something that is evolving the whole time, right? And browsers are checking what is the best way for the user. And third, actually second, right? It works different in different types of vendors, okay? So we need to test our web app and the different options that it can look like at the end. All right, so we already created our manifest file. We put the properties and the values, and then the next step is to add our manifest file into our web app. How we can actually do that is pretty simple. In our HTML, we need to add this link, right? Let me tell you a few things about this link. At the very beginning, when I was testing around manifest files and things like that, the standard suggests that we should put app manifest.web manifest. This is a standard. The same thing to identify that is a manifest file, we should apply rel equal manifest. Okay. At the very beginning, I was just doing some testing around and just putting whatever name. But at the end, so the browsers can identify that you're actually trying to upload a manifest file, please try to use these standards, okay? And then if you're still finding that your manifest file is not complete, or you're not sure about which are the properties that you have to put or something like that, there are different tools that actually can help us to make these steps easier. As I said here, there's usually somebody that trying to help developers' life easier. So if I were on stage, I would be like, hey, some applause for that. But today we're gonna do just virtual applause. So which are the tools that can help us to make better things around our PWA? In this case, besides workbooks, the one that Maxim suggests for manifest file and your very first steps with progressive web apps, I suggest the first one is the manifest validator, right? And the second is PWA builder. So let's see the manifest validator. Basically, if you're building your PWA and if you are writing your web manifest file, probably you can have a chance to miss some typos or even the format that you're doing in your JSON. So here you go to this website manifest validator. You just copy and paste your web manifest, right? And then yeah, it just validates. So for example, in this case, it says manifest is valid and you're up and running to put this manifest file into your PWA. And the second tool is the one that I really, really like. And if you never built a PWA before, I suggest to try these between PWA Builder and also Workbooks. Both tools are made by Microsoft. With PWA Builder, what you can do is, first of all, you copy and paste the URL of your website, right? And then it actually can give you a score about which things you are missing in terms to deliver a complete PWA. And one of the things that you can do is to create your manifest file. Again, one of the properties that you have to upload are icons. So here you can follow step-by-step guide in actually to upload one icon and see which kind of formats of those images you need. All right. So with this, we already create our PWA, we upload our file, and let's see which are the results, right? Is actually my PWA installable, or which kind of stuff I can do, how it looks like for the user, because at the end, what we build is for the users, right? So we have two options. The very first option is a badge, right? This is a case of Samsung Internet. If you have a PWA, if you open the browser in your mobile device, you're gonna see this badge that you can see over there, that it will say to the user, hey, I'm a PWA, you can download me, right? And the positive side of this, that is pretty simple, right? And the other side is that maybe the user it's not gonna find it at first sight. Okay, so we are trying to check what is the best way to approach the user and say, hey, we are a PWA, we are able to download this app, right? Other thing that I can share with you is, in the other hand, you can have uninstalled prompts, right? This was the case of Mozilla that actually had a new prompt that says, hey, add to home screen. In this case, are a little bit more intuitive for the user. So they say, oh, okay, there's a message there. I'm going to be able to install something. But also at the same time, we are there's new changes around why add to home screen, because at the end, if it's a web app, it should say install this app or something like that. So this is another open discussion that I would like to give you a few comments around, and I would like you as developers think about which are the best ways for you to approach the user. This is other thing that I have to share with you. And there is something that is called user engagement required, right? Before it was, there was a few restrictions about when to show the install prompt, for example. So before showing at first, for the first time, the users should return to the web app at least twice, right? But at the end, I think Google made an experiment checking what's the difference if they build something and show to the user at the very first time that the users open the app, if actually there is an engagement in terms of downloading the app. They didn't find any much differences around that. So this part about how the user install their app is something that is still open and in discussion in different browsers, checking what is the best way to approach the user, but also at the same time, not being like a spam, because nobody likes open your PWA and then finally have like a lot of notifications or even push notifications that's something else that is PWA future. At the end, users need to have a really good experience around. There's other thing that I have to just share with you as a comment. There's a way that actually you can manage the installation event with another event that is called before install prompt event. I would just make this as a comment or parenthesis because soon, probably before install prompt event is gonna be out of standards. So as you can see, this is something that is still changing, right? But just in case, before install prompt event probably is going to be out of standards soon. With these events, what do? What you can do is to manage the way that actually you want to show to the users how to add to home screen or how to show the prompt. Other thing that we have to keep in mind, right? Before being able to show the badge or the install prompt a message into your web app, you have different types of requirements. It depends on the vendor. In the case of Samsung Internet, you need, for example, to have HTTPS, a valid manifest file, and the service worker. Okay? And what does it mean to have a valid manifest file? At least you should have the following properties. Those are the properties that are mandatory: short name, start URL, icons, and this one is a property that we didn't mention before, but it's called display mode, that you have two options that you need to complete with. In the case of Samsung Internet, again, that is a standalone and full screen. So display mode is basically the way that you want to show your web app once that is opening from the icon, okay? And there's other discussion around PWAs and actually all these things around install your web app. Till now, we have the chance to show a badge, right? The other option was to show a message to the users to install the install prompt. And then the third option that recently we are working on is to show your web app into the store, right? So what's the case of Samsung Internet? We recently, a few months ago, we launched the chance to put your PWA into the Galaxy store. Currently, as you can see, there is a category that is called Web Apps, and actually you can see your PWA here. As a personal opinion, I'm pretty happy to have PWAs here also in the store, because actually I want people that are going to be able to find my web app also during this channel that are stores, right? With this, you're gonna have your web app closer to a native app, because actually you still have to reach out to people. Also, as a company or as a developer, you want to monetize your app, right, in different ways. Maybe having your web app to the store is a good option for that, right? So in the case of Samsung Internet, we launched this a few months ago. And how do you upload your PWA into the store? Well, currently it's open to the US only. And there's a simple and manual functionality to upload your PWA. You have to send an email, and then currently there's a lot of work around which are the requirements, how is the process, right? Or which kind of categories you should put into the web app store. In the other hand, there are other different categories around progressive web apps. For example, Google recently suggested TWA, Trusted Web Apps. That is not, Trusted Web Apps is not like a more advanced PWA feature, but TWAs are just a way to put your app into the Google Play Store, okay? So just wanted to mention that. And then what does it mean for the users to install a PWA? Besides having access easily to your web app, in the case of Samsung, there's something that is called Web APK. So what does it mean? That actually you're going to be able to check almost as a native app different types of resources that your app is using. For example, how many storage, mobile data, and things same as a native app. Okay. And one other thing that I'd like to share with you is I think Maxim was really clear about what does it mean to build a PWA. And in my case, we need to focus into have a good experience for the user. So this means having best practices for the web. I know that probably you're really excited to have an icon, make your app installable, but besides that, we have to check how we can improve the user experience, how we can improve connectivity and the offline experience. We have to, before actually think about the icon, let's think about how we can improve the engagement. Let's check data, how the users are using our app and things like that. Check what is the best option for your user. And the positive side of the web is that, as you know, we're living in really special times, and I can see that there's a lot of hackathons around, that developers are trying to build solutions around what is happening. And think about the web too, right? Because I think like there's so many new apps related with COVID-19, and actually having an app into the store, it means several steps to get an approval or things like that. And not all the people have the chance to download every new app that is released. So having another option that is using the web, especially during these times, it can be part of reaching more people. And actually, we are Samsung Internet. I didn't introduce myself that much. Samsung Internet, yes, is an open source Chromium engine. It's a browser. It's available for Android devices, and you can actually download Samsung Internet and check how our browsers work. And we are really advocates about progressive web apps because we really believe into having a really kind of native app like experience into the browser. And after saying this, currently we're in a situation to trying to understand what's going on into the developer side. What we are trying to check is how users are using PWAs. We are checking numbers, statistics. We are checking if actually the chance to have your PWA into the store worth it, not just only in the US. We want to expand these into Europe or into other places around. But before making those decisions, we need you to tell us which kind of things you're working on, which are the pros or cons about trying to build a PWA that you find out. And saying this, I would love to stay connected at this moment virtually, right? If you have any comments about PWA, something that you would like to mention about which kind of challenges did you find out? Actually, we are trying to check how is the best process to upload your PWA into the store. Please, let's stay connected. This is my Twitter. We also have Samsung Internet Twitter where we upload a lot of articles and also collabs to actually help developers to build better PWAs. So thanks. I hope that you were doing really great at home, having your drink and learning PWAs today. So yeah, I think we are opening for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Very insightful, great, fantastic presentation. I think everyone enjoyed. So thanks again, both of our speakers, great speakers, Maxim and Laura. So we got actually 2 questions so far. So I'm gonna read the question and then you both can answer this question. The question is that what are your thoughts about the feature of PWA on Safari, specifically after the new change in Safari? So, welcome.
Laura, do you want to start?
Yeah, so it's funny because we were talking about this like I think 1 week ago when we have this first approach to this comment. In our case, we like to work as closer as we can with different vendors like Samsung Internet with Microsoft or Firefox to see what is going to be the new line of PWAs and share it with developers. In the case of Apple, we are not really sure what's going on around PWAs because we didn't find like enough support around that. And also, I think this restriction can be not the best news to have progressive web apps into into the users. So in my case, as a first site, I don't see it as positive as I wish. But again, in the case of Apple, they have a different roadmap around progressive web apps. So let's see what's happening. Maxim?
Yeah. So that's interesting because this was my question to folks from Samsung Internet. Yes, literally, it was even not a week ago, but a few days ago, during office hours of Samsung Internet team with Kenneth Christian as a special guest starring, and this is really a great beginning of this event. So I encourage you all folks to follow this office hours. I hope you'll continue, right, Laura, with this motion. And it was exactly me who asked this question. And yeah, we had a similar discussion, like different companies, they have different roadmaps related to PWA. But let's start from pessimistic side of the story. Yes, it's definitely not super friendly movement from Apple side towards PWA, but on the other hand, they do not break any specification, any standard, because there is nothing in service workers spec about how long it should live on this or that device, on this that platform. It fully depends on the wish of platform vendor. So, and it's not that Apple decided to break all the agreements. No, let's say it's possible, and it's not something that makes building of PWAs impossible, because progressive web apps, this is about progressive enhancement. We cannot rely on service worker is always available. We cannot rely on what we cached, pre-cached is always available. We have to do this extra checks, feature detections, etc., to make sure that our app is not breaking under any conditions, under any circumstances, on any platform, any version of the browser. Let's say it will decrease somehow user experience, but anyway, this is not a blocker, and let's keep an eye on this. I can't wait for article from Maximiliano Fürtmann, who is main explorer of what happens on iOS related to PWA and service worker and everything around. So let's wait. Let's hope for the best. But again, this is not a blocker. This is not something that says that Safari is out of the game at all.
Exactly. So maybe also we can put it this way. So, if we do progressive web app, we still have some users that are using different browsers. So if we give a better user experience to those users, we respect at least those users, So if Safari doesn't do that, then okay, that's enough unfortunate, but still there are lots of browsers out there that they are doing progressive web app, and they're supporting progressive web apps. So the second question is that what is the best practices to handle push notification for different browsers? Different browsers apparently behave differently. So what is your thoughts and opinion?
So in our case, it's not only in terms of our browser, also is in terms of push notifications in general. We have to be really aware about when we're using push notifications. At the very beginning, it's a way to increase our user engagement and say to developers, hey, this is happening, or things like that. But at the same time, it can be a kind of a spam, right? So check when actually users have this push notification useful. One of the things that you can do as a developer, okay, how this functionality of my web app, it can work with a push notification. Check how many insights, analytics, and I think analytics, it can help you a lot to make decisions around how you can actually use push notifications in order to use user engagement. Because at the end, it can feel like really frustrated if the users think like you having spam the whole time, or instead of having a reminder is fine, but having all the time things like suddenly you are using other thing and something random appears in your device. So this kind of stuff are the things that we need to avoid. I really suggest to take a look into your web app analytics and see which are the events that actually can help the users to have more engagement, actually are useful for the users.
Yeah, and I can only add some practicalities. Again, use feature detection, and if this or that platform doesn't support push notifications, maybe there is no even reason to show this button like subscribe or enable. And please be very thoughtful before even offering these notifications, even if they are available in the browser. As I mentioned in my presentation, the rules are changing, let's say, quite often. And if it was possible initially to show this subscribe request almost immediately, I believe now it's only possible after some interactions with this origin. And who knows what other let's say blockers will developers have before even bothering people by these requests. Are you agree to receive push notifications? So be very thoughtful and please prepare your user. And yeah, if push API is not available, just hide this UI. Also, I will send one link to the chat. Maybe Majid, you could share this with everyone. It's a GitHub repo called PWA Police, where me, my friend, and pretty much all dev community got their bugs or, like, let's say, strange behaviors of different platforms related to different parts of PWA, and let's say specifically it focused on iOS. And this particular link is to the section I wrote how to at least partially mimic this this behavior of push notifications when it's not available. Yeah, there are some workarounds.
Okay, great, thank you. And the last question is, how is the experience of using PWA Builder for converting to Xcode and eventually to App Store? So I guess the question is that, like, maybe it's back to the TWA, so if we can release them to App Store or not.
First, unfortunately, I don't have this experience. I know that this is possible, and yeah, so let's say I only downloaded this Xcode package, was generated for me by PWA Builder, but never tried to compile this and not even think about pushing to App Store. So no experience from my side, and also unfortunately, TWA idea concept will not help you with Apple's App Store, because it's purely related to Android APIs. So let's say TWA works fine, and lots of good feedback about making PWAs real like first-class citizens on Android devices in form of native apps. But yeah, I cannot say anything about App Store from Apple.
Yeah, on my end, I didn't use PWA Builder for conversion to Xcode either. But going back to TWAs, just as a reminder, it's trusted web apps. It's not like maybe it can be some confusion around what is it, or is it different PWA? It's still a PWA, but with some features that allows you to put your web app into the Google Store. So we have also the different process to upload your web app into the Galaxy Store, and it doesn't mean you have to build a TWA. Even me, I confuse PWA TWA. So it's as Maxim says, it's gonna help you just into the Android store.
Yeah, and
Right.
just to finalize TWA story, this concept is not new at all. So we could wrap a web application into some native wrapper for years. So all this Cordova, PhoneGap, everything was available and still available. What TWA adds to this is really seamless integration of your web app and Android. By this I mean, for example, sharing the same permissions, sharing the same like storage, sharing same subscription to push notification. So this makes this, let's say, old and well-known process way closer to what we wanted to get from this.
All right. So we don't have any more questions. So with that said, I'd like to thank both of you, Maxim and Clara. I cannot shake your hand. It's also restricted by COVID-19 right now. But thank you very much for making this event happen. And on behalf of all GDGs from Norway, I'd like to thank everyone on this channel. I hope to see you again. We're going to have a lot of more collaborative virtual events. So hope to see everyone again on this channel.
Yes.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.